Heyo, this is Joycey.
And Blake.
And welcome to
Savagely Scaled.
Episode 2.
This episode, we're focusing on what is CrossFit, which to me is such a big and broad question and can be individualized for each person. But we'll be going over some of the history, definitions along the way, and our vision and how we got to join CrossFit.
Yeah, so you guys are getting an inside scoop as to the history of the wonderful sport, how it started, what is it, and also just how the mega sport and what it has grown to become. So we're so excited to jump into this. Let's do it.
And starting with episode 2 in
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, guys. So something that Blake and I have been talking about and that we would love to start beginning with this episode is what we call the CrossFit word of the day.
Ooh.
I know, right? What is it?
Tell us more.
So we're just going to select one of the various terminologies that we CrossFitters use when it comes to workouts. And again, this is just a way to further shape you and get you used to what will be pretty much the words you use in CrossFit workouts across time.
Yeah.
So for today's word of the day, we will be doing WOD. W-O-D. And what does that stand for, Blake?
Workout of the day.
Oh, yeah. So whenever a CrossFit coach, whenever you show up to a class, they will always do an intro and say, today's WOD of the day. And that's pretty much the code word for you to say, oh, this is today's workout, you know? But only the cool people know what it really means. So you're officially part of the cool people group. Welcome.
Mark it on your bingo cards.
Right.
What we're going to start with is, what is CrossFit? And I thought for the best thing to do, because when I took my level 1, they started with this, is CrossFit as a definition, which is a fitness program that produces measurable outcomes through lifestyle changes centered on training and nutrition.
Ooh.
Workouts consist of constantly varied, high-intensity functional movements.
What?
I know.
Fitness? No way. As Blake mentioned, CrossFit is just a coach-led fitness program that's pretty much tailored to any fitness level. It was initially developed by a Sir Greg Glassman, who founded the CrossFit sport along with Lauren Janai in 2000. There is around 12,000 affiliated gyms in over 150 countries as of 2022, which is crazy to think of, right? And under half of those are located in the United States alone. The first CrossFit gym was opened in Santa Cruz in 2001, which is crazy to think that it's been 23 years already that the sport has been, since inception, has been in existence, which is absolutely crazy.
It is. And believe it or not, I mean, CrossFits now are buildings, and they used to be somebody's garage.
Right?
And that's why they called it a box, because all they needed was a building, so a box to
Mind
work
you,
out in.
You can still work out in your garage if you want to do
Yes.
CrossFit workouts. I mean, no judgment there. I do that all the time.
Yeah.
But just I guess a random fun fact to just speak to like how big CrossFit has become. Like CrossFit used to be aired on pretty much just YouTube from what I remember when I would watch the sport. It would be just kind of aired there. But very recently, starting this past year, it started being aired on ESPN, which, as we all know, once you're in ESPN, you're in, right?
Oh, yeah, you're in the in crowd.
You're official. So that just speaks to just how big the sport has grown since it started. And it's just exciting for, I guess, for an average CrossFitter, and also I would imagine for Blake to see this sport who's barely starting to rise into recognition in, I guess, the regular society, because before it was there. It just, I feel like it wasn't really out there for other people who were in in other sports, I would say. So it's exciting to see it finally get the recognition that it deserves.
Well, thanks for showing my CrossFit age.
Is that truly it? No judgment here, man. No judgment here.
Yeah. So, like, going more into that, like how Joycey said, like, again, it started in Santa Cruz with Greg Glassman. Going into that, moving into 2005, that's when the first outside CrossFit gym affiliation gyms came to be. To start, So it was just, one gym, one guy with this
Wow.
idea. And then let's fast forward even more to 2007. This strikes the first CrossFit Games. And girl, can you believe the first CrossFit Games only had
2007.
70? Yeah, 70 participants. 70.
That's insane.
No age qualifiers, no like masters, no like we have so many divisions and participants.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, looking at nowadays, which future episodes will be touching on open and games, which favorite season is that, but it's just crazy.
It's insane.
Crazy.
It's baffling. It's about time though. I'm sorry, but it's about time.
Yes. And that same year also, we had the CrossFit Kids was also introduced in 2007, which some gyms have, some don't. It just depends on what they want to work on.
Completely forget about that.
Yeah. In 2010, it's showing big growth. I believe there was about 1,500 affiliates worldwide. That's when we go into worldwide. Then starting to grow with the games and classes. 2012, you see Reebok as a sponsor with athletic apparel and footwear, which we know is not the case anymore.
Right.
And we just recently, Noble didn't re-up their contract. So now we have, what is it? Go Ruck.
This year, yeah.
Yeah. And I think they signed a contract for 5 years.
Wow.
Because I think Noble was 3, so Go Ruck is 5, which I didn't know that they signed contracts. I
did not know.
Baffled. But I guess most places sign contracts.
Just speaks to the legitimacy of the sport again.
Right? Moving on, in that same year, so 2012, that's when level 1 certification started. Oh. So CrossFit started in 2001.
Right.
And it wasn't until 2012 that we started getting coaches needing to have that level 1 to coach, which now they have level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4.
I always took that for granted because every time I go to the gym and kind of see the coaches' qualifications, I never even thought about that. But I mean, honestly, just the ones that I've had only have like level 1 and 2. And to me, they're like absolute just experts and so knowledgeable and just every kind of thing that goes with CrossFit. So that's interesting to know.
And then this last bit that I have is like moving into 2019, 2021. That's when formats of the games started changing on more global approach and the qualifications. We also had during that Eric Raza acquired the company, and now we have Don Fall. I believe that's how. Don't quote me on some of these names, okay, you guys? I went to speech as a child.
Again, we're very green.
Yes. But he's the new CEO, which, as we progress this again, we reiterated this and we'll probably reiterate it in every episode. We'll touch on things, and if you have questions about that, we can always go over what was going on.
100%.
Did you have any more to go off of?
I think that speaks wonderfully a lot to the history of it, and I think that in a gist, like Blake mentioned, it's just been a sport that's been growing. It's changed management as well, but you'll learn with time kind of like, who the managers are, what kind of like, they're in charge of like pretty much shaping what is the games, the open, the workouts and everything. So it is pretty important to kind of know who these people are, because eventually they're the people who set up the games and also set up the workouts that all of us will do in the open. So it's always nice to kind of hear about their background and what they bring to the table. But I guess just jumping into a little bit more about what a CrossFit class looks like, aside from just, what the history is and the people behind it. So when we think of a CrossFit workout, like Blake mentioned, it consists mostly of varied high intensity functional movements that focus a lot on measurable outcomes. So when we think of measurable things, we're thinking like heavier lifts, right? Longer workouts, being able to put a time or a number to like your progress. And they place a lot of importance in that because they want you to see how much growth you're doing in the gym, not just showing up and doing a workout, but actually allowing you the grace to understand the areas where maybe you need a little bit more work and maybe the areas where you excel at. When you go to a class, it pretty much involves a group of other classmates or other teammates that you will go into class with under the instruction of like Blake said, a certified coach, someone with a level 1 or 2, who takes the time to teach you and educate you on all the moves that you're going to be doing that particular day for that workout. So, in essence, what they do, the class completes modified versions of the exact same workout. So, like Blake said, for example, maybe someone who's been into CrossFit for a few years can go in and do the workout as it is written on the board. Versus maybe a 65-year-old woman who maybe injured her knee might not be able to do the whole workout as it's written, but the coach will come up to them and say, let's change this so that way we're not affecting the knee that's been injured, right? And take care of you in that sense. So no excuses, guys. This is a kind of like workout that can be modified to anything that will work for you. The fundamentals to CrossFit is pretty much just learning all the moves that are pretty much used across all workouts. So things that I can think of are like burpees, pull-ups, deadlifts, cleans. And I think, at least for me personally, the biggest thing that I had no experience with whatsoever was lifting weights. So I consider myself a pretty good cardio person. I don't know what you think, Blake.
Yeah, the cardio queen over here.
I do have that term name, and I own it proudly. But the weightlifting part, I am just not really well versed in that. But I go into class going to those days where maybe it's a weightlifting class, so I could work better on that skill. And I appreciate the flexibility of the various workouts we have throughout the week. So the coach tries to mix it up so you're not doing similar moves back to back. But usually each class lasts around 60 minutes and consists of an overview of the workout you're going to be doing that day. You'll also do a warm-up, maybe do some skills practicing on the lift, and then go into actually doing your workout. Now, every CrossFit gym is different.
Yes.
And they practice, their workouts differently. They have their own pricing. They also offer different variations of like class packages, memberships, things like that. So it might differ gym to gym. But on average, that's kind of usually what you're looking at for a first class and kind of what it feels like.
Nobody finishes alone.
Nope.
With our gym, like Joycey said, gyms are different.
Right.
So warm-ups might be different. And this is based on programs, right? CrossFit, on its own, they release workouts daily too. They release their own WODs. So you can even go off of that, of what you want to do. Even like when you take the level 1, they say you should try all the workouts for a year because they change everything. Our gym goes through Comp Train. It's a different workout programs. And then we have where you
that are geared toward CrossFit moves. Is that?
Yeah. Or you can even do individual. Like we have members who do Invictus and they do it for practicing for the games, which is completely different programming than our class programming. Because now we're going into this person does 2.5 hours of programming, where again, our classes range from 45 minutes to an hour, depending on what we're working on. Are we saying every CrossFit gym's the same? No. Should you try if you feel like you are not comfortable at one? That might not be your home gym.
Right. That's true.
You need to find your gym that works best for you and what you're seeking. For us, we just get a lot, and that's just a touch on what the owner expects with that and what CrossFit is.
100%. And kind of going off of that, speaking of CrossFit and how people kind of dive into the sport, like, why did you join CrossFit? Like, what was your biggest motivation to kind of jumping into the sport?
So I actually was one of those people who were like, oh, CrossFit people are bulky.
It's a cult.
I don't want to do that. And my mom is the one who forced me
It's
to
always
go.
mom.
This CrossFit gym was also connected to a Globo gym, with all the machines. And I'm on my treadmill trying to figure out my day, looking at all the machines that
Isn't that the worst?
It really is. I don't care if the screen is a nice forest that I'm walking through. It was mind-boggling to me to figure out, I want to do leg day today. Look at all the machines that are taken.
Yeah. Having to figure all that out.
Yes. And having to figure out if that dude who's wearing short shorts with all that sweat
left a stain.
Yes, sprayed down.
And didn't clean up.
Or that girl who's completely doing that movement wrong is going to be okay. And then, figuring that out, there I was. And my mom comes up to me. I'm like, oh, your class already done? And she's like, no, nobody came in today. And I was like, wonder why? Because people don't want to get bulky. And she's like, no, that's not it.
Right.
Again, certain times, certain seasons, classes differ.
Right.
And she goes, I talked to the coach and he said that you could try it out.
Oh. Mom signing us up to things that we don't want to do per usual.
And I was like, I'm not going to like it. And she's like, I know you're going to love it.
Mind you, Blake and I are only children too. So this is why we've kind of have similar experiences when it comes to our moms.
So I go in. It's a young kid. I think he's like 22, 23. Mind you, I'm also young at that age. But he just seemed really young.
Like a baby.
Yeah. And he was like, okay, we're going to work on handstands and handstand walks. And we're going to work on
your first class?
Yeah. Oh, handstands.
Welcome to CrossFit, girl.
Handstands. I love handstands. I did tumbling. I did cheer. Loved it.
Okay, little Miss Flexible.
And so we started doing practices like kick-ups off of the wall.
No problem.
Even that,
for you.
like, he was like, if you can't do that, we can do bear crawls. There's so many different modifications to earn that same workout of that movement.
But Blake didn't need that because she had
it down. And then the cleans. Again, lifting. I didn't really lift.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a hard concept for me to understand.
Scary too.
It is.
Like the idea of lifting a lot of weight and like moves that you're not used to doing.
Yep.
Like, yeah.
But even after all that, I was hooked. I was so excited. I was like, sign me up.
After class 1?
Yes. And I got it. And then, you guys, kid you not, 2 days later, I'm like, hey, Mom. Got her on the phone. I'm in the dressing room.
Was this in California?
Yeah, I was in California. I was getting dressed in the locker room. And I'm like, she's usually here. And I call her. And I'm like, hey, we got class. What's going on? And she's like, oh, girl, I'm going to be late. I probably can't come. Work. I had a meeting. She's a teacher. She had a conference after school.
Stood up.
And I was literally like thinking I was 10
without
my mom, going into a brand new class with people that I have never met who have done this longer than me. And how am I going to do this? You guys, I walked through the door. I was welcomed with, hey, welcome to CrossFit. How long have you been doing it? And I'm like, this is my second workout. And they're like, okay, hey, come meet everybody over here.
Yeah,
this is Blake.
Yeah.
And this is what we do in our gym. Like, if I know it's your first couple ones, like, and you don't know anybody in class, I usually do an introduction. We go around the room, say the names. I usually like to say why you enjoy CrossFit. What has kept you here?
Right.
You know?
Or if you're single, all the coaches will just introduce you to other single people. It just happens.
We're trying.
Thank you. It's appreciated.
But yeah, and been hooked ever since. But what about you?
Yeah, I think kind of like I previously mentioned, I've always been a fitness gal, but I think it all started back in 5th grade, once upon a time. Same thing with my mom, actually. I was a chubby child. Growing up, I loved my food.
Girl, I'm still chubby.
Girl, I think we all had our chubby years growing up, let's be real. But 5th grade was kind of like, I was chubby. And my mom was just like, we can't have this. We need to work on this. And I remember her taking me to the Rose Bowl every after school. She'd pick me up. She'd be like, we're running a lap, which was...
You've always told me the story that you ran, and I picture it being like a middle school track.
Oh, girl, no.
You ran around the Rose Bowl?
Girl, yeah. I ran around the Rose Bowl with my mom.
Y'all?
Imagine a 5th grader.
If you're not from California, I need you to look up how big around the Rose Bowl is.
It's like 3.1.
Yeah. So she made you do a 5K?
Yeah. Exactly. Girl, how do you think I felt at 5th grade? And I was like, this is the absolute worst. But I'm not going to lie. It did build me up in terms of like, because I never forget one of like the workouts. Like I was crying and bawling like, this is the worst. I hate it. And mom was just like, you got to push through it. You know, you got this. You've done it many times. And, you know, she was right. I got through it. It was hard. But I think ultimately that's what had me and helped me just, you know, push through like not only, I guess, hard workouts, but also just hard things in life in general, but it started.
Yeah, nobody wants to run around the Rose Bowl. They hold concerts.
It started up pretty traumatically.
I saw NSYNC at that place.
Oh yeah, that place
NSYNC was packed.
It has its goods. It has its.
They have football games there.
Let's be real. I walked like half of it.
Oh my god! And my mom was just like, "Sorry, babe. This is how your body's built."
Girl, no, we committed. We commit. But mom was hardcore into fitness, super big on nutrition. So part of my childhood, like even though I didn't enjoy it as much, I was healthy and so fitness, cardio, running, all of that's always been like a big thing I just always loved. And like I said, I kind of coming into Arizona, like I was just kind of doing my own workouts, running outside, working out in my own box in my gym at home because I do have a little home gym there. Honestly, depression started kicking in and I was like, I can't do this. I need to find like somewhere to spend my time, a gym, a place where I can, practice my fitness. And honestly, the biggest thing for me was location and also whether it was affiliated or not, which honestly, like at the time, like I mentioned, I had only followed CrossFit as a sport. I didn't really actually do the workouts myself. But I looked it up online. I found Kingman CrossFit. I realized Kingman CrossFit was the only affiliated gym in the area, and it was 7 minutes away from my house, so no excuses, right? So I remember just walking on in there. Coach Dave walks in, and he's like, "Hey, how can I help you?" And I was just like, "We're interested in CrossFit." And I had walked in with my, I guess, ex-husband now. Yeah. By the way, but I had walked in there with my ex-husband and just. I just got the tour. I didn't even have to ask questions. I was just like, sign me up. And Coach Dave brought the form. He's like, I'll see you on Monday for your intro classes. And that was it. Again, I've always loved the sport. I just never believed in myself to be strong enough to do it. Like I was really intimidated just watching like the games and stuff and being like, there's no way I could ever lift that much weight or
you ran around the Rose Bowl.
Okay, but like compared to doing like 100 pull-ups and burpees and stuff, like that's just I'd rather jog. Thank you. But I mean, you build up to it, like at first the first workouts were absolutely horrible. My first week jumping into class, like I was like, this is hard.
You get the CrossFit waddles.
Yes, I do. And then I want to say the first class and the second class, I was like, I want to throw up after this workout, but after that I'd be like, wow, I actually finished it. And I did my best to keep up with like my peers. And that was good enough for me, and honestly, for me, it was just a matter of like, am I leaving this place feeling accomplished? Yeah. And I was. And that's what I felt I needed like every day to feel like I was being my best self. And Kingman CrossFit was doing that for me.
Yeah. And that's why I say like at the beginning, it's individualized. Like, yeah. And what I want you to get out of this, did you get a workout? Did you accomplish something? I don't care if you didn't do what your neighbor was doing. Because you don't have to worry about that. You need to be worrying about yourself.
Right.
And
it's so
what
hard.
You're accomplished. It is.
It's so hard.
I tell people all the time, I find that CrossFit people are still slightly competitive with everybody. And that's why we stick with it. Yes. And that's why majority of us stick with it because we're busybodies and want to prove something.
Bring it on.
But also that you can grow with it.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't have a pull-up, you can aim to get a pull-up. And what can you accomplish or what do you want in a year? And I usually ask some new members too, like when they feel down about themselves, what do you want then this year?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the questions that Coach Dave asked too in your intro classes. He's like, like, why did you join CrossFit? What's one of the biggest fitness goals you have for yourself? And for me, the biggest one was like, I want to be able to do one pull-up at least. Yeah. And it took me a good year, probably a year and a half to actually finally get it. But I'm not going to lie, like I am very competitive in nature. So when it comes to like when I first started and I was in workouts, like, like I would see the person next to me and be like, man, like they're doing like 5-10 pull-ups at a time and they make it look so easy. And I'm over here struggling. And I think that comes to like what you mentioned before, Blake, and like CrossFit can also be a very big mental game. Mm-hmm. Having to kind of like, you're not only learning, physical fitness changes, but you're also learning how to kind of work with your mind and learn kind of like when to kind of draw the line and say, I'm not going to push myself further because that's going to lead to an injury. Or being like, oh, this is where I can probably push a little bit harder because I'm feeling really good. And I think that's a big aspect that we tend to kind of not really talk a lot about in CrossFit. It's more than just like the moves and the workout. It's about knowing yourself the most. And I feel like having joined the sport, I feel very in tune with my body. Like I feel like I know it more than I ever have in my life. All right. So as we kind of discussed in this episode, CrossFit is just a sport that has grown tremendously since it began back in the 2000s, and it has grown to be such a global phenomenon that encourages people to participate in not only fitness but work alongside a community who ultimately just wants to see you succeed and wants you to become pretty much the strongest version of yourself you possibly can. So we're so grateful to be such a part of such a great community that is CrossFit. But ultimately, what we do want to do in our upcoming next third episode is talk a little bit more about one of the biggest events and pretty much the first event to start off the CrossFit year, which is the Open. And that's Blake's official favorite. It's so much fun, y'all, and it's upcoming, and we're just so excited to share with everybody, you know, what is the Open? Who can participate in the Open, and what does it involve? So in episode 3, we'll deep dive into that a little bit more and share with you.
Awesome. If you feel like this was your swig of pre-workout,
Gulp.
please subscribe, follow, and leave a review about this episode.
Exactly. But a big thank you to my co-host, Blake.
Oh, why, you're welcome.
Yeah. This episode was written and reviewed by both of us, edited by us. And also just a huge shout out again to all of you guys for taking a listen here. Our music is from SoundCloud. And in terms of just some findings that we've kind of discovered, we used some resources, some of them being Wikipedia and games.crossfit.com.
CrossFit.com is a big one if you have any questions about CrossFit and if you want to find a gym close to you. Also, we did sportsfoundation.org on the history and where it grew. Until we meet at the whiteboard again,
This is episode 2 of Savage Tales.
bye!
Hey!